Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project, brains behind the business. It's your front row seat to the business elite. New episodes twice a week.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Calvarowski, and as always, the yang to my yin is here, Susan Hobson. Susan, how are you?
I'm so fired up for this interview. We were just talking shop off air. We got a fellow hockey player in the locker room today, so I know it's going to be nothing but flow. Let's get this party started. Robert, how are you? How are you feeling this week?
Absolutely. And as always, we have to start off with a quote. And so I have one here from Deepak Chopra, and he says, "In the midst of movement and chaos, keep stillness inside of you."
Oh, I love this quote. And I love Deepak. Tell us why you picked this one today, though.
Absolutely. And so, we're wrapping up the year end, right? And as we're recording this, it's November 22nd. And so US Thanksgiving's next week. And then, not probably 2 weeks later, most folks are wrapping up for the holidays. And there's a lot of things that people are trying to close out right now. And there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of planning for next year. And we got to finish out Q4. And so it's just a reminder for folks out there is no matter what's going on, it's coming back to self and back inside to keep yourself rolling. And so
Love that.
Susan mentioned it. We have a hockey player in the house, former Amazon vice president, the author of the Level Up newsletter, which has over 150,000 people who sign up for it. An executive and career coach, Ethan Evans, is with us today. Ethan, how are you?
I'm great. I'm living my best life. As you said, holidays coming up here in the U.S. The snow is falling. I'm a skier also, so the ski slopes open today here because we've had the right weather. So I'm wrapping up my work week and ready to enjoy.
We got the ski slopes going here too, so
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It's already snowing on the West Coast, apparently, here in Canada. Ethan, you're going skiing this weekend. I feel like you're going to be launched from a cannon next weekend with Black Friday. It's got to be the busiest time of year at Team Amazon. But let's back up the game tape a little bit for our audience, and let's just plug them into the backstory behind this mission that you're on a little bit. Do you mind sharing that with our audience in terms of what inspired you to get on this track in the first darn place?
Sure. So I left Amazon 4 years ago, so my brethren will be suffering. But I took as my mission to pay forward my good fortune by teaching the good luck I had in my career to others so that they can have both career success and satisfaction. And at some point, I reached the level at Amazon where managing a billion-dollar business and doing that were not compatible. I needed to spend enough time making the money that I couldn't really concentrate as much as I wanted on sharing career wisdom. And so I stepped outside to do that, to become more mission oriented. So it's definitely true that a lot of my former colleagues at Amazon are heading into their hardest season. For me, it's a good time to spend time trying to help people figure out, well, where are they going with all that hard work, which is kind of what I try to do.
So how do we tee that up? How do we tee that up in terms of, we're playing all out. Robert just says the busiest time of year. We got to remember to slow down and be in alignment with ourselves. But yeah, where do we go from there if this is something that we're contemplating in our own lane right now?
Well, it is obviously there are times where all you can do is put your head down and work in a crunch time, but that can't be all the time. And anytime you have free time, I think the first thing I ask now is, what do you want to be remembered for? I think this is one of your questions that you often ask about legacy. I ask people, where are they heading? What do they want to be remembered for? What do they want their legacy to be? And I remind them something I've said that's I've borrowed from someone else, but it's really popular, is in 20 years, the only people who will remember that you worked late were your parents and your kids.
Mhm.
It unfortunately, as much as I love Amazon, Amazon won't be calling me up 20 years from now to ask how I'm doing.
Yeah, so true.
Right? It'll be my family, my friends, my colleagues. And
Yeah.
so I encourage people to remember you're working hard, but that isn't going to be what matters in 20 years. And so
Mhm.
how do you balance that? And where are you taking that so that 20 years from now, or 10 years, or 5, or whatever scale you're looking at, you've achieved the things that are actually going to matter to you. And I can go on and on about this. Big corporate culture gave me my platform and my life. At the same time, I understand that those structures preach a lot of things they don't mean. Corporations
Mhm.
will talk to you about loyalty and then lay you off when, and say, oh, sorry, business needs. So you have to just be aware that there's an asymmetric relationship there where you're valuable until you're not.
Mhm.
So I encourage people to think through that and then decide, okay, how am I going to engage with this job? What am I going to give it? What am I going to expect from it? When am I going to make the choice maybe to leave, as I did, or to change jobs? You don't have to become an independent, but just take more agency in your own future.
Mhm.
Ethan, I mean, of course, I'm a huge advocate for agency. Now, I do want to talk about career. Like, obviously, that's your
Mhm.
sweet spot. And
It is.
I often talk about how working hard is not the way to get promoted. You mentioned the magic loop in some of your material that I was
Yep.
looking at. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So absolutely. The magic loop might be kind of my signature idea that I try to help people with. And just to run through it, it's a 5-step career process. I'll give them very quickly. First, you need to be doing whatever job you have. You have to be doing it well, because if you're not doing it well, the thing as a leader I need is for you to do the job at least adequately before you start asking me about opportunities. But once you're doing that, I encourage people to take the step of going to their leader and asking, how can I help? And one reason I encourage that is people help those who help them. So there's a quid pro quo or an exchange. The second is I literally surveyed thousands of managers in person and online, and they will tell you they want help and they're very rarely offered help. And so you can immediately stand out with an authentic offer of help. So step 2 is offer to help. Step 3 is when they ask you to do something, if it's at all within your skill set, do it. Because of course everyone dreams of like being asked, oh yeah, we have this choice project with high profile and not that much work and I'd love help with that.
Yeah.
Right? But more often you're the thing the leader needs help with is a little muddier, a little, stickier than that. And the worst thing you can do is offer help and then say, oh, well, not that. Right? You just burnt all the goodwill you were trying to create. But that's step 3, is do the work. You may have to do step 2 and 3 a couple times to build the relationship. So ask how you can help, do something, ask again, do something. Then step 4 does require what we were talking about earlier, that you know what you want in your life. And that's where you change the ask a little bit and you say, hey, I'm really enjoying helping out. Is there any way I really want to fill in the blank, get a raise, get promoted, work less hours, have Fridays off, change projects? Is there any way I could help you that would get me towards my goal? And I'll help you. And what are your goals? And you help me. And that's where you sort of make that partnership a little tighter. And the great news is step 5 is the easiest. It's just repeat. It's the loop part. This works for a lifetime. There are, of course, corner cases. People always ask me, oh, well, what if your boss is exploitative, or won't I end up overworked? And I have materials that address all of that. But that's the simple idea of how to build a career is, and to your point, it's not all hard work. It's finding the right work and finding the supportive person who can help you achieve your goals.
And Ethan, how about the people who walk through your door that cannot identify what they want? Because I feel like I get a lot of clients who certainly can identify that they're on the wrong track. How did they know? They're burning out, they've lost the passion, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to knowing what they want, it's like cricket. So if somebody is totally new to this space and you're trying to help open up greater self-knowledge in and around what actually would be aligned, how do you actually walk them through that bit of the process?
Yeah, great question. There's a few things. One thing I ask, and all these questions I'm sure may sound familiar to you, but not to everyone in the audience. One thing I will ask is, what are your gifts? What are your natural talents? I think a lot about the flow state. So that state where work comes to you effortlessly, time passes by, you're doing, some people call it being in the groove or in the zone. What puts you in that state? What work is easy for you but seems to be hard for others? And then I also ask, of course, what do you love? What do you really like to do? What fires you up and excites you, gives you more energy rather than takes it away? Like, I am sure I will leave this podcast more energetic because it's one of those activities. So even though I'm putting out energy and speaking enthusiastically, I will leave with more power. What are those things for you? A great question is, if you had all the money in the world, what would you still do for free? Then once people start to realize the things they would do, even if they didn't have to at all, you start looking for, okay, how can we navigate your career to have more of that? And part of my history is I worked for Amazon's Twitch division. We bought a company called Twitch TV that does video game streaming. So the basic mechanic on Twitch is, I am a good video gamer or an entertaining one. I play a game and chat with an audience and you watch me. And it's gaming entertainment TV. And the top creators make tens of millions of dollars. So I point out, people are earning a living playing video games. If you find that passion and you navigate your career there, you can make a living, a good living, doing most things, but you've got to figure out what it is first.
You ever get the people who say to you, but I've never had that feeling before? Like, I'm imagining some of our corporate clients, right, Rob, who've like been on the conveyor belt their entire career, right? And they never really looked up. They just were doing what they were told to do, what they should do, what's going to make them a paycheck. And so have you ever had a client look back at you and be like, but I've never had that feeling. I don't know where to look for it.
So honestly, I don't get that very often, because with that, now I have, and I'll talk about it, but I feel it's relatively rare when you get people to think about at least what do they enjoy or what do they dream of doing if they didn't have to earn a living. Most people have an answer.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
There are a few people who are so deeply buried in, oh, I'm just grinding away. You have to give them some time and let them observe that a week. You say, well, why don't you just try and be more mindful over the week? What parts of your job do you like better? And let's go look at your calendar. A lot of leaders that have a lot of meetings. Which of these meetings are you somewhere between neutral and excited to go to? And which of them are you like, oh God?
Yeah.
That starts to give a sense of, okay, for the ones that you are kind of looking forward to, why is that? Is it the people you'll be working with? Is it the topic? Is it the project? What about that? And then that's at least a start. That's a thread you can start pulling on. You just keep pulling. Well, why that person? Why that project? You pull and pull. And usually people, it may take a few weeks. Like, I will say, I feel extremely mission aligned in my life, and I have for several years, but it was a 5-year journey to sort of figure out, okay, what is it I'd been climbing the corporate ladder at Amazon. I was very successful doing that. I got to a certain point and said, okay, I think I'm done with this. And there definitely was a, well, if I'm done with that, now what? And it was kind of a 5-year process. And so for some people, I get hearing 5 years, like, wow, I don't have 5 years. Well, actually, you do. Like lives and careers are long. If it takes you a little while to explore this and experiment and find your groove, it's very much worth it.
Mhm.
It's always 5 years seems so long, and yet it's actually incredibly short. And like folks know who listen to this show regularly, is literally 5 years ago, I was a depressed corporate engineer living in Edmonton, Canada, which is marginally less, a bit warmer than Churchill, Manitoba,
Oh
but
gosh.
not so much. Yeah, so you can do, I mean, you can do incredibly a lot in 5 years. Ethan, I would love, like, of course, at Amazon, like you were leading a group of, 800 plus people. What are some of your top advice on leadership for folks out there?
Sure. So I want to just for 2 seconds rewind to your 5-year point, because you opened with a great quote. I'll just share one that's from Bill Gates. He said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I found that really to be true. It caused me to go sit down and write a 10-year plan for myself. Not what I would call an aggressive plan, just, well, where would I like to be in 10 years? And then kind of what would it take to get there? And when I backed it out, I'm like, wow, that destination seems fantastic, but each year's steps don't seem that hard because it's so much time.
Mhm.
And I think people do feel like, well, my life isn't what I want today. And, it's New Year's resolution time. So I'm going to make resolutions on January 1st. And by January 15th, I need to have it fixed. And that isn't going to work. Coming to your question about leadership, there's so many things about leadership. Unfortunately, I could talk until Thanksgiving about that, in my opinion. But I think part of leadership is finding the style that does fit you somewhat. So there are leaders who are much more charismatic. Follow me because I'm a big person, I'm dramatic, and like I'm gathering all the people who like energy, and who cares where we're going together. And then there are the people who are very quiet and supportive, and very meticulous or very scientific. You have to figure out your leadership style, and then how do you compensate where that isn't enough, but then also how do you lean into your strengths? I often tell leaders and everyone else, we spend a lot of time trying to fix our weaknesses, but you get rewarded much more for your strengths. Of course, both of you have athletic backgrounds and bring that in. Athletes get paid for the thing they do really well, not for the, even, there are a few people who are somehow in different sports called total players, but most players, they kind of have one thing. And since it's hockey, that I play, I often joke, I play defense. Why do I play defense? Well, I feel like to play as a forward, you just need three things, right? You need speed, moves, and a shot. Unfortunately, I have none of those, but I am big and tall. I have an enormous wingspan and reach, and I can strategically see the game. And I get excited when there's a 2-on-1 break on me, or I'm on the penalty kill, because I'm like, this is my element. You're getting nothing.
I see the hockey player in you coming alive right now.
Oh, for sure. I admit, like the last time I played on my, men's league team, I'm keeping our team ended up tied 2-2. We tie game in the end. But I was personally +2 on the ice. And so I'm like, hey man, like I did my part.
Yeah.
The 2 goals we scored were me. The 2 goals we didn't weren't. I kind of got to call that a win not throwing my team under the bus, truly, but I was excited about how I did for my part of the team.
I'm curious how your sporting background has actually shown up in and maybe even informed some of your leadership style, since you're talking about leadership style a second ago. Do you see any hints of that or traces of that?
Well, absolutely. The place I think the most about it is we all know the teams in all sports that don't have a single superstar but outperform the teams that do. Sometimes you need star power, but to take a book that probably you and some readers are familiar with, Moneyball, a baseball book, there's this idea that the right collection of very good players playing as a team effort will outperform a star-laden roster. And I think I tried to lead my team in that way, which is look at who do we have, what seats or what positions are they playing, what seats are they in, and how do I inspire the team as a unit to outperform? And I absolutely have seen teams where the love of each other and the dedication to the team will cause, players, to use that analogy, to play way above their level. Because maybe on their own, they would be very happy to call it a day, but they're not going to let anybody else down. And that I think, trying to create that is what I have as an analogy back to a team. And I certainly see that on the ice, where, team members will play harder for each other. I'm a 55-year-old guy playing men's league. A lot of folks aren't that excited to like back check. It just isn't,
That's real.
But they will cover for you, right? Like if they see like, oh, I need to step up for the team, they'll find energy that, frankly, if I'm already back on D, they're like, Ethan's got it, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm not there, they'll step it up, and that's covering for each other.
Ethan, you're talking about like inspiring your folks to come together as a unit. What part of vision or setting kind of that future state for your team is involved in that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a huge fan, just to set a reference, of Simon Sinek's work and Start with Why. Because I do believe, look, a couple things I believe. Everyone who's working, almost everyone, particularly in professional environments, is coming to work to do a good job. There's very few people who are coming and saying, I kind of want to be mediocre today. My main goal, we hear about quiet quitting, for example. It's been I want to do as little as possible. I think there are a few of those people, particularly at more entry levels, who they're stuck in a mindset that work and life are like an extension of high school, where the goal was to get the best grade with the least work and cut class when you could. But I think pretty quickly in a professional world, people rise above that and they want to do great work. So if they're not doing great work, how do you help them find why? Are they in the wrong company? Are they in the wrong role? Do they not understand the mission? Well, mission is about what the heck are we trying to do? And I feel very strongly that if you give your team a vision of where we're going, they will know, they will be able to make their own decisions and get there. So I'm a little bit of a quote library. I'm going to keep going. I will butcher because I don't have the great Canadian education also in French, but I think it's Antoine Saint-Exupéry or something like that said, if you want to build a ship, do not gather men and wood. Instead, teach your people a longing for the endless open sea. And the quote's not exactly right, but I totally get, don't just gather men and wood and a boat blueprint. you have to set that vision and the love for here's where we're going and why it matters and how great it's going to be when we get there. And we're all going together. Another piece, last piece, is that we're all going together has to be believable. If it's, yeah, so here's this great vision, and it's going to take a lot of work and sacrifice, say this weekend. So I'll be up skiing, but you all get there together and let me know Monday.
Yeah.
That won't work. As a younger manager, earlier in my career manager, I was managing a very small team. We were behind on some goals. The team wasn't necessarily, we use Scrum. So everybody in the morning is saying, this is what I'm going to do today. But when I would check in the evening or the next morning, they hadn't done it. I said, okay, we're going to change our process a little bit. Every night at 5, we're going to check in where people are and what they said they were going to do this morning. And if you're done, great, go home. If you're not, give me your dinner order and I will go fetch you dinner while you finish up. So I told people, I said, look, I will be staying every night anybody's not done. So I'm not asking any of you to do more than I will, because I will be here every night. Well, of course, I did fetch dinners for a few people, but it also just changed the tone. You know, people had to, we're actually playing serious and we're all together. And like, do I want to make Ethan get me dinner, or do I want to like focus a little more through the afternoon? Maybe a little, some people say, well, that's a little heavy-handed, manipulative. Well, maybe, but by God, the team pulled together and sped up.
Some might say it's neuroscience.
You can get me dinner anytime, Ethan.
Accountability systems are the hottest things in neuroscience. They drive execution and follow through in real time.
I love it. I'm a student of neuroscience, obviously an amateur, but yes, some of that I learned to do intuitively. Some of it I very much read about. But of course, I certainly believe, you're asking me about leadership. I believe a leader must lead from the back in terms of being supportive, but from the front in terms of sacrificing. If someone has to take the hit, everybody better believe that you're in it with them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. How is you transitioning out of big corp after all these years managing teams into your own business changed your leadership style?
Well, a few ways. I spent a lot of my end career working on leading by influence rather than leading by chain of command. So I took some steps inside Amazon to start growing that skill set. But of course, I don't have any employees. I have a few people who, you know, like freelancers or contractors. And then I have a business partner that I share revenue with so that our incentives are aligned. So one thing you can do is incentive alignment. But how it's changed my leadership is I spend a lot of time thinking, how do I make this a win for this other person? Like I write a lot online, and I hired a gentleman to edit for me. So I write a piece, but you know, then he gives it a second set of eyeballs and improves my writing. How do I make sure that's something he's enthusiastic to do? Yes, I pay him, but also, you know, as you know, you can pay for a hamburger and get very different products depending on where you are and who's doing it. So it's, to answer your question succinctly, I've ended up thinking a lot more about making sure it's a win for everyone involved. Because my editor's name's Daniel. If Daniel's winning, then I no longer really have to do anything. If he feels that doing a good job editing my work is important to him, I don't have to do any management of that whatsoever. I will just get great results.
I love it.
That's so cool. Now, of course, for folks out there, if you want to connect with Ethan, I've dropped his LinkedIn in the podcast notes, as well as you can check out his website, ethanevans.com. And on his website, you can subscribe to his Level Up newsletter and join over 150,000 folks on that mission too. Ethan, is there anything else you want to tell our folks about that you're doing?
Sure. I think as much as I hope people follow me and join, and I teach classes, live classes on a platform called Maven, which you can find through my newsletter, or I talk about them on LinkedIn that may help you with your career. My mission is to help as many people as I can. So it's not money driven per se. And what I think, share is if you don't love what you're doing, it is possible to get there. It might take the 5 years we talked about, but just like your story, Rob, it is possible to migrate to something that you love and that pays you well. Maybe, not Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos money, but pays you well. And that's very possible, but you have to put effort into that journey. And so get started, because it's always going to take 5 years. So the sooner you start, it may always take 5 years. The sooner you start, the sooner it can happen. And second, if you don't start, it won't happen. And I think we spend so much time at our jobs, whatever it is we do for work, that to hate it. And statistics say up to 70% of people really kind of loathe their jobs. That means 2 out of 3, 7 out of 10 people we meet are very unhappy in their work lives. And I consider that a tragedy. So my way of improving the world is to try and reduce that amount of tragedy. I respect all the people who have other gifts, saving animals or addressing homelessness, which are extremely worthy. They're not my gift. My gift is helping you enjoy your work.
It is no small gift. I feel like that's what the world needs more than anything right now. When you think about the ripple effect that ensues from the people who loathe their jobs, right? From a mental health perspective, a physical health perspective, the health of our environment, our communities. So you said you ask your clients this question all the time. I have to fire it right back at you there, sir. What do you want the legacy of this wonderfully important, crucial mission you're on to help people find work that they love to be someday?
Absolutely. What I want the legacy to be is, I'm pausing because it's so big to me. I want the legacy to be more leaders, broadly defined, who have the freedom to then work on the problems of the world. So I'm engaged in my own couple projects to help the world beyond this. I helped create a refugee center in Poland that takes care of refugees from the war in Ukraine. It's one of my big projects. The other big project I've worked on, I just finished 8 years of board service with an organization called the Washington Trails Association. It's essentially preserving trails and hiking in Washington, but that turns out to be an environmental mission with forest fires and other problems. So my 2 personal missions right now are, trying to create justice and support for those displaced by the war in Ukraine, and trying to keep the West Coast from burning down. But I don't judge. There are thousands of missions that need people. I hope my legacy is equipping people to get to where I am, and it sounds like both of you are, where we have the time, emotional energy, and resources to give back. So boiling it all down, I'm trying to create a generation of people with the position and comfort to give back.
Amazing. Ethan, thank you so much for joining our show today. Susan, where do you want to leave our folks this week?
70%, Ethan said, of people out there loathe their jobs. We know the average on engagement currently worldwide is something like 23%. Only 23% of the workforce is even engaged when they go to work. This should be something that we're all thinking about right now, especially. That's why I said the world has never needed people on an aligned mission, doing work that they love, that they're passionate about. Because yes, Neuroscience backs this up. That is the best work that human could ever do. And just imagine the world we would all live in if everybody was set up to work like that. I love this interview. It is saturated with actionable strategies for anybody out there in our audience who's resonating with some of those stats we just referred to. Consider this your call, folks.
Yeah. And for me, I need to start back with what Ethan mentioned, right? Is taking action and choice. And it starts by taking one step forward. And this is thinking about what your goals are, whether that's 10 years from now, 5 years from now, the legacy you want to leave, however you want to frame it. And then it's pulling together all the other pieces. What do you love? What are you great at? What can you get paid for? Do you want to stream on Twitch?
Yeah.
And for the parents out there that told some folks that you could never make money playing video games. But that's the world we're in now, right? In the future, there's even more potential. And that's why it's being expansive in what you're looking at and starting exactly where we started today with the quote is coming back home to you and then unlocking that for the world. Ethan, it was incredible to chat with you. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Been very much my pleasure. What a great conversation. So much fun.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.